A hearing on whether Bernie Madoff's bail should be repealed is scheduled, as we have been reporting, to start in just about 6 minutes. The big question, bail or jail? Thomas Gorman is chair of the SEC's litigation practice group at Porter Wright. He says bail. Robert Mintz, former federal prosecutor, currently an attorney with McCarter and English, says jail. All right, the case for jail first, especially within the context of he has not yet been formally indicted.
Sure, but the question right now is not whether he is going to ultimately be convicted or what his sentence would be. The question is, does he pose the risk of flight, or even more importantly, more critically, is he a danger to the community, which in this case means has he flaunted the government's, the court's ruling here, and has he tried to dissipate assets? Because that's what the government is all about here, trying to locate these assets. And the government is arguing that by sending those gifts out and by having those checks in his drawer, some $170 million worth of checks, that he was trying to dissipate assets, and therefore he ought to go to jail.
That is a pretty good case. Well, I guess I used the word a loaded term, Tom, but it is a very fair point. He sent out $1 million worth of what he called trinkets and Hanukkah gifts. That's hard to believe, isn't it?
That is hard to believe, but here's the point. And the question here is he going to show up for court? Is he dissipating assets? And I think the answer here is there are more than enough protections to make sure he'll show up for court. There's more than enough protections to make sure he can't dissipate assets. All of these items have been returned, and really, if you look at these appear to have been personal items that he had around his apartment that he was giving to some friends, and sure, he shouldn't have done this, but it really looks like a man getting ready to go to jail. He doesn't need this stuff anymore.
All right. Okay, so let's say we took that case. You know, that's one way of looking at it. Who knows if it's right or not? But, Robert, I still keep coming back to this. The prosecution could choose to spend their time in a couple of ways, right? I mean, it appears now they're spending all their time trying to get him put in jail when they could be spending that time coming up with a formal indictment so they could go in front of a jury and say, here's our evidence, this is why this person should be convicted and go to jail. Why don't they focus on that?
Well, I think they're doing both. There's no question that in addition to making this argument that he ought to be put in jail pending trial, that they're also doing a very thorough review of all these records. They're trying to recreate exactly where this money went. One of the big questions is, how could anybody spend the kind of money that is alleged to have been lost in this case? And the second question is, are there others involved? Because the scheme that is alleged here, that is involving some $50 billion that may have gone on for decades, it seems almost incredible that it could have been carried out solely by one man. So the government is taking a good hard look at that, you can be sure.
Now, Tom, one other question a lot of people have had is, when we talk about bail, you know, if that is the option, he stays in his apartment, if that's what happens, that his security is being paid for by his wife. Now, some investors out there might say, well, why is his wife paying for that? Wouldn't her money hypothetically be money that investors could end up getting back if it weren't being spent on security in his apartment?
That is, again, a fair question. There is some money from his wife. That money may be recoverable in this case. That's yet to be determined. But this is being done under a court order. And again, this is very small amounts of money simply to secure his appearance in court. And remember, it really benefits everybody if he's available to consult with people, to look for these assets, to go through these very complicated records, rather than being in the Metropolitan Corrections Center where access is difficult.
All right, so, Robert, where do we go from here? I mean, it would be a surprise at this point, wouldn't it, if the decision were to be jail? I mean, I know you advocate that, but at this point in the appeal process, how big of a surprise would it be if indeed it got overturned and jail was the solution? He didn't go home today.
Well, remember, the district court judge here gets to review this fresh. In other words, he doesn't have to go with the decision that was made by the magistrate judge. He can look at all of these same issues and come up with a different decision here. It's probably unlikely that he will change the decision made by the magistrate judge. And if the decision, in fact, is to leave Mr. Madoff out, that doesn't mean the government can't revisit this issue should there be any other violation of the terms of his bail.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thanks very much. I want our viewers to know you're not going anywhere because we are awaiting this hearing and the decision. Both Robert and Thomas will be with us on the other side of it to continue to break this down, whether we get a jail decision or not. But we're going to take a break. When we come back, markets really holding within the range after the assessment of a